All right.
Welcome to the Living Hip Hop Podcast, B-boys and girls around the world.
What's up, everybody?
The illustrious professor, spoken word competitor, lunchroom beatbox battle champion, and the guide and mentor, one of the people who's been instrumental in making sure that the International Hip Hop Festival finally became an institutionalized tradition at the institution of Trinity College and not having to bootstrap itself up like it did so many years. Please give a big round of applause to Professor Markle. And we have our first guest, who's been here before there was an International Hip Hop Festival. This man went and invested in the international global communication. Not only did he, like many of us, take samples from around the world and reinterpret them and turn them into hip hop and send them back out, he actually went out in the world and gathered records from all these different places that we didn't even know had hip hop, and just out of his own pocket purchased records, sold his home, sold his house, sold his car. I don't know how he did it all these years, but please give a round of applause to Greg Schick of World Hip Hop Market, which I will always know him as. The man who has records from all over the world. And
I didn't sell my home yet, though. So.
Price is going up. Don't sell yet. Price is going up. Leave something for the fam, right? And of course, we have the man who can explain the spiritual heart and not let this just be a trend from the beginning to the end. The cycle continues. A brother that always starts things off with the right energy and ended the festival this year, the 15th International, with the right energy, just like he began it. It's a pleasure to have Minister Server on the call. Let's give Minister Server a round of applause.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me.
And I just want to say congratulations, Professor Markle, for your new foray into yet another digital, platform. You've been on so many platforms doing podcasts and classes and exposing students to different types of formats to make learning something that carries it into the 2021 and beyond, right? Instead of just learning in old ways. I remember when we did our hip hop world cultures class, we used the digital learning and we experimented with implementing music and clips and samples from different places. But now with COVID, it's almost like these things have to be used to a degree. So it's good to see you again on another digital frontier.
Yeah, well, thank you. You're the one who put me onto this and encouraged me to try to do this. No question. I'm really glad we're all here today. Are you passing the mic to me, or am I passing it back to you?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you
yes,
passing
sir.
the mic
I'm passing it to you.
Yeah, so this is experimental with the Trinity International Hip Hop Festival, the annual event. We just had our 15th festival, made history in two ways. It's the 15th festival, and it was also the first of its kind that was a virtual showcase. And so that happened, we're about a week and a half out. If people do want to check it out, you just want to be able to go to the Trinity Hip Hop Fest afterparty.live. You can check out the full 3 days of programming. And for those who don't know about the festival, this is an event that's a combination of panels, discussions, lectures, workshops, performances. And so what we had were 3 days with various different representation, which we're going to get into. But this is also the first of its kind where we're actually doing like a reflection on this, which I think is really great historically to get voices in. And so what you're going to see every Wednesday are different stakeholders, participants in the festival, from featured artists as well as other organizers. We're going to bring in some students in here. We're going to bring in some artists who were featured at this year's festival to have these sort of conversations. I'm really happy of the people that are here today because these are three core people that go back to the festival to its inception. early days, year 1, year 2, Khaiim the Rap Poet. Since no one introduced you, Khaiim the Rap Poet is in the buildings. Give a round of applause. But here's somebody who, MC, rap artist coming out of Lower East Side, finds himself at Trinity College as an undergraduate, graduates, but then later mentors people that would be involved in the founding of this festival, like McGee McIlvain and others. And then we have Minister Server and Greg, who was there since number 2, affiliated with Nomadic Wax. So people who have historical memory, which is important, and then people who have been involved as the festival organizing. It's progressed over the years in the sense that it used to be like students take care of it. Nomadic Wax kind of develops the platform and the program. Students find the money, take care of the stuff while they're on campus during the festival. And it's evolved to really intergenerational organizing experience, multiracial, multi-ethnic organizing experience, which comes with both benefits as well as interesting challenges. Yeah. Especially when in this case, the students are the central organizing force. We don't move without the students moving. And we work with what the students are bringing to the table. I think we can all point out to like when it was a really bad year organizational wise with the students, the festival still ends up happening, but you also know as an organizer of some of the weaknesses that could have been prevented if we had students that were more on point. This year we had students who were really on point and who were tackling something completely new. But just to start off this conversation, I was hoping each person could go around, if we can kind of do a pass the mic. We're here for the next 40, 45 minutes. If each person could kind of pass the mic and just first talk about the nature of your involvement in organizing and being part of the planning of the festivals. We're going to start off. We gotta give our respect to the elders. Going first, Minister Server, our godfather, our advisor, our spiritual advisor, our memory bank. Can you talk a little bit about, your involvement? What role do you play in planning the festival?
Thank you guys for having me here. I love this concept of Dr. Markle because it is important to have the comments and the kind of the debriefing. So I appreciate you all doing this. My role is always one really to maintain the essence and be of service in whatever ways that I can. Really, just to kind of get in wherever I fit in because it is a Temple Hip Hop chapter. The only functional Temple Hip Hop chapter that I know of, not that it's not any other, but it's the only one that I know of. I stay connected to really do all that I can to make sure that the essence of the festival is based on, what the Temple really stands for. What the Temple Hip Hop really stands for is the spiritual and cultural side of hip hop beyond entertainment. To be able to use the culture to bring together people from diverse backgrounds, be it ethnically, racially, generation-wise, whatever. So my role is always more. This year I had the privilege of doing the intro and the outro, kind of giving a little brief background of it. And each year I've done different things from, workshops and lecturing. I've actually hosted 3 times, which is always interesting for me. In fact, the last time I hosted was really significant to me because I was 53 years old hosting a college festival. And I'm like, I'm glad they still had an old man hanging out with him. You know what I'm saying? So my role is to maintain the essence and be of service. If I can connect any connections. But what's really dope about it, the team that you all have, I really didn't have to do too much at all, to be honest. The intro and the outro, but, you all ran it with the community partners. I was on the calls, but again, just to be there in support and, to be of service in whatever ways that I can, man. But you all did a great job. And again, just doing the intro and the outro was an honor for me to be a part of it. Doing it virtually, it was dope. I really love how everything came together. So, that's pretty much my point.
And you're underselling yourself a little bit, man, in terms of your importance. While you're not necessarily talking about like hands-on, you're this. When students know that they're connected to, a founding member of the Temple of Hip Hop, it adds a different sense of purpose and meaning. So you provide this other element of purpose and meaning for the students, that they know that what they're doing is not just for the college, but it's for this hip hop community that goes back to the 1960s, 1970s. And you also did a very one of the first, I think, live recorded one-on-one sessions with one of the lead organizers earlier. That was part of the planning as well, right? When Minister Server, you did an interview with Adiana, which was a live Instagram interview, which was incredibly important. Especially, Adiana loved having the opportunity to speak to,
so dope.
because that was two different, again, like I said, this is a multi-generational thing. And in my calculation, there are 4 generations involved in organizing this festival. And that's a very rare thing when you're thinking about the Hip Hop Fest. So let's bring it back to Greg. Can you talk a little bit about your involvement past and present?
Yes. So the first festival was in 2006, and I had around 2003 I had taken an interest in hip hop outside the U.S. And in 2006, when I learned about the festival, it was a little too late to come. It was only a week before the festival, so I came up in 2007 as a vendor. I was actually selling, like Khaiim said earlier, I was selling records and CDs, hip hop records and CDs from all over the world.
How did you first hear about it again?
On the internet. It was just the promotion that they were doing. Yeah, they were doing promotion, and it was a press release or some sort of article was out, and it said, "Hey, we're having this festival. It's next week." And I was like, "Oh no!" I was living in Chicago at the time, and I was like, I can't make it out there. Like it was killing me, because at that point I'd only connected with people online about this global hip hop growing culture globally. I knew about it in the US. I'd been part of it for 20 years or so, but the global aspect of it was really fascinating to me.
And you had already, before you were a vendor here, you had already been collecting these records from different countries, which a lot of people were not aware that there was hip hop in different countries. So just give us a little bit of that real quick before you go into that year.
Oh, sure.
So because just coming from your perspective, right? From my perspective, meeting you, you were this cool vendor that had this thing. But I'm thinking, coming your perspective, I thought like Nomadic Wax had reached out to you, or McGee or something like that. So the fact that hip hop itself, like that's why I want to know your background, because it's that much love for something that's so underground. And then again, you were finding the most obsolete people, right? We talk about being underground in hip hop, but imagine being underground in hip hop in another country. And there's this dude, Greg, that is finding you. Can you just give us like a year prior to that, like how you were doing that, and then how that led to you like reaching out and feeling like I need to be at an event like this because I really do this?
Yeah, like I said, I started being involved with hip hop back in the 80s, 1984, late 1983, and just grew with it. I love seeing the evolution through the 80s and the 90s, and I was a little bit of a DJ, a little bit of an MC, a little bit of a b-boy, just kind of dipped my toes in everything. But I did a radio program in college for a couple of years, and moved to Chicago and was working there trying to get a foothold in the industry. And all of my my music collection got stolen, actually. I had a majority of it in a storage facility in the basement, and we had just moved in and it wasn't totally secured. So it was all, almost everything I had was stolen. And I was really lucky because I had insurance, and also because I was such a nerd. I kept like every receipt, and I had spreadsheets of all the stuff I had. So normally they were like, "Oh yeah, well if you can prove it, if you can give us photos and receipts," and
all
like,
of that is amazing. That's all amazing.
And I was like, I sent it to them, and they were like,
college underground hip hop. You had insurance receipt. Okay.
So they, I estimated I lost about 11 grand in music, and they gave me about 3.5 grand to replace it. And at that point, I had a massive cassette collection from the 80s. And I said, I always wanted to, I always said, man, I wish I bought everything on vinyl. And I said, this is my chance. So I went and I just started buying back all the classic albums on vinyl. And on vinyl, there was singles, 12-inch singles that I didn't even know about. So I got really deep into that for a minute. And I started buying stuff on eBay. And then I was buying collections from people and reselling them to kind of fund it, because once the insurance money runs out, but I'm still a junkie for, I'm still digging, and I got to have the records. So all these people from different countries started buying from me, from Taiwan, from Hong Kong, Brazil, Australia, England, France. I mean, so many places. And I just started having little conversations with them and saying, well, what's going on with hip hop in your country? And they give me lists of stuff. You know, they'd be like, oh, this is who you need to check out. And a lot of them,
this was through the internet, right?
Yeah, all through the internet. And a lot of the people would say, you know, hey, let's trade. So I had people from Japan and Brazil and England and Australia sending me records, and I was sending them like these classic hip hop records, 12-inch singles and stuff that they wanted, and they were sending me stuff from their country. And I was really digging it, because it was at that point in the early 2000s, there was a lot of innovation going on. Sometimes I almost say there was like a golden age going on in certain countries, England, Australia. They were just really finding the samples, that there was stuff that I'd never heard. It wasn't the American music they were sampling anymore. They were sampling stuff from their countries. Anyway, I kind of built that up and made a little website. I started interviewing artists, producers, DJs, and putting that up online while I was selling some records still, and making mixes for my friends who were like, what is this stuff? And I was like, oh, this is great stuff. You know, I don't understand Japanese, but man, they go hard, you know? So, yeah. And then I just, through the internet search, I ran across this article.
So you were just trading for your friends at first, right? You weren't actually selling it first?
Right. I was just, well, and so it kind
like
of,
a
that
lot
was
of
a
us,
transition.
we put cassettes together, like
Right,
Professor Markle, Minister Server. That's what we used to do. You know what I mean? Because people don't even understand back then. It wasn't like you went to the radio of all places. It wasn't like you went to the radio of all places to hear some new hip hop. You know what I mean? You went to the mixtapes, you traded things. My West Coast friends send me something from the West Coast. I send them from the East. They might send me Freestyle Fellowship. I'm sending them some underground Biggie, Eminem. You know what I'm saying? So it's like people traded all the time. How did that turn into you actually like selling and becoming a business?
So like I said, I had initially, just to fund my hobby of record collecting, all of classic hip hop, I was buying collections, and then I'd keep some of them and resell the ones I already had, and that generated a big enough stream, and then for me to keep going for, I don't even know, 10 years, 8, 9 years.
So just the word of mouth, basically, from your friends.
Yeah, just, well, eBay and word of mouth. I had a bit, you know, you build up a clientele, people who buy from you a lot, and when you get new collections in, they buy it from you. And then I started building up the international stuff, and I found distributors, and I got hooked into them. And I was like, I actually formed an LLC, and I was buying stuff from distributors in Europe and Australia and Japan, and then listing them for sale. That didn't actually go that well. People weren't ready. You know, I didn't sell a ton of, I'll be honest, I didn't sell a ton of international stuff to American listeners. They didn't know the name. They didn't know the name. They didn't know the music. And actually, I probably sold more in one shot when I brought things to the festival than I ever did.
Let's
go.
Like
month to
Let's
month
go for
because
the festival. Okay.
and that was my initial impetus because I was like, yo, if they're doing a festival full of international artists, why wouldn't I bring all my product down and sell it to the people who actually want to find it, you know? Whether it's, you know, like African, you know, hip
I
hop
never
or
heard this
whatever it
story,
was.
Greg. I appreciate you so much for. I know I asked you a couple questions, but that, you know, Professor Markle was like, let's give some background to what's happening, you know, like, and it's like you said, because of COVID, right? We always say that the positives and the negatives. We have time to step back, not just be at during that weekend. We have time to step back and learn a little bit more about each other. I mean, a lot of people have been seeing you, like Professor Markle was saying, Minister Server and Greg, for over a decade, but never really knew some of the background story. Professor Mark, I wanted to also ask a little bit more about Minister Server's background. I don't know if this is a good time. So Minister Server, we was just talking to similar lines where Greg, you know, he was already doing this, and although it wasn't like successful as a, you know, as a commerce, it was successful as a path of individual hip hop who did this all on his own as much as he could, and then found this community who wanted to do it as much as him after he had already sacrificed so much. And I feel like you have a similar path where, you know, there's so many people who talk about hip hop. There's so many aspects of hip hop. It's certainly so commercialized in some ways. But here you are, someone who was living it and seeing her infinite power, right? You were seeing it as this deeper thing that would manifest in all these ways. What was it like for you? Were you waiting for something like the festival to happen, to continue? Were you expecting something like this in the midst of all the weird things that have developed from hip hop culture and the appropriation? Was it, what have you seen just as many positive things such as the festival? But leading up to that, the first question is, what were you doing before the festival that made you so suited to be a minister for this festival? Because a lot of people didn't realize that there was a temple of hip hop. A lot of people, as you know, just think hip hop is either a genre of rapping in Walmart aisles too, or they think it's a style of dance, which isn't even have nothing to do with b-boying and b-girling. So for you as someone who was, how did you come into really knowing the culture when so many people missed it? And then how did it lead up to this point of finding the festival?
Great question. For me, it really, you know, evolved kind of naturally for me. Like, for me being from Atlantic City, New Jersey, when hip hop came into being, we were already, you know, kind of, you know, around the hood, you know, doing different, block parties and stuff like that. So by the time Rappers Delight came out, it was like, wow, you know what I'm saying? So, you know, back then we weren't even calling it hip hop. Everybody was either a rapper or you was a pop locker or a DJ. You know what I'm saying? Whatever you were doing, that's what you were. I've always loved poetry. I got exposed to poetry at a young age, in sixth grade, and I have an older sister that turned me on to the last poet, young. So, you know, just the word play and all that. So when I heard rap music, of course, it was similar to what the last poets were doing. So fast forward that, I go to college, and I graduated from high school in 1982. So in 82, there's no rap industry or nothing like that. It's not even rap albums at the time, just singles and things of that nature. I was in a rap group. We opened up for Africa Bambaataa and the Jazzy Five and Jekyll and Hyde and all that. But I'm on my way to college. I'm not even thinking about rap other than a little hobby and whatnot. By the time I graduated from college, though, that's when, you know, the Public Enemies, the LL Cool J's, the Run DMC, you know, you started seeing more serious type of rap. So, of course, you know, being a poet, you know, started looking into it more and things of that nature. But I actually was a DJ. The name Server is from my fraternity. I'm a member of Omega Psi Phi, fraternity incorporated, ERP2Qs. So my frat name is Server. So I was DJ Server. So fast forward that, once I graduated, I moved to Atlanta. Now, Atlanta at the time, I moved to Atlanta in 87. And at the time, Atlanta was pretty much going on the Miami bass kind of sound. You know what I'm saying? It was, you know, that's what the music was in Atlanta. And in 1992, I became a part of one of Atlanta's first hip-hop collectives called Nation Time Syndicate. And the whole goal of Nation Time Syndicate was to preserve hip-hop culture and its art form, and to make sure that it wasn't something that was going to turn into some commercialized, that some people that was going to, maintain the culture. That was our mindset.
What year was this around?
1992.
92. Okay.
Yeah,
So this was like going into what they call the golden age of hip hop, right? Like this was right before Souls of Mischief dropped there.
Right. This was around the end of the golden age. What we really try to say the golden age, of course, it's subjective. But we normally say the golden age is from like 83 to about 92. Run DMC starts the golden age for us. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, so
and it goes to about 92,
this was a
give or take a few years. I'm saying it's very subjective.
No, but the thing about it was that coming from like Markle was saying, origins in the 60s and definitely by 73, 74. The thing about it was by the end of the 80s going into 92, you definitely had people who had seen this, because you said something powerful. You were creating a collective to preserve hip hop as a culture. And that's just very interesting to me, that it had been around enough years where people was trying to play it light, say it was a trend, but certain people saw that it was a very powerful force, in some ways an extension of the Black arts movement, political movements, and just a true form of expression, right? So you actually decided to preserve the culture with this organization.
Yeah, because again, like if you look at 1988, when you had, to me, the greatest year in rap music ever, 1988, because of the groundbreaking groups that came out, and people started, to be politicized. That's what made it really dope to me, that it became politicized. So by the time the Stop the Violence movement, we're all in the same gang, we started to see, hip hop beyond entertainment. Like this is not just some rap thing. This is really our lives. And of course, at the same time, we're growing chronologically in age. So we're starting to look at the world a little different. We're becoming, husbands and fathers and things of that nature. So you begin to look at the world different. At the same time I was involved in Nation Time Syndicate, I was a substitute teacher in the Atlanta, in the Clayton County school system down here as well. So I used to bring the Source magazine as kind of like a carrot, to put it on my desk. Well, because when you come in as a substitute teacher, first they got to try to test it, see where you at as a sub and all that. But I used to tell them, I got children and I got nieces and nephews. I'm from Atlantic City, New Jersey. I'm not here to try to rule y'all, but y'all have work to do, and it's my responsibility to make sure you do it. Now, if you do what you need to do, we can talk about hip hop, we can do whatever. So I started doing hip hop education without even knowing I was doing hip hop education. And mind you, during those times, the Source magazine literally was like the Bible for the culture. You know what I'm saying? It was dealing with hip hop music, politics, and the whole nine. So it was an opportunity to share with students.
And when you got that 5 mics, it was like being approved or what do they call it? Like
that was better than getting a Grammy. Man, that was better than getting a Grammy to get 5 mics. You know what I'm saying? Especially back in the early days when they weren't selling mics. That's a whole nother question. But so to fast forward it, by 1996, we began to get really rooted into the community of Atlanta. I started, doing workshops in schools and things of that nature. And I did an interview with KRS-One when Return to Boom, like about 94. I was also a writer. So we had, with Nation Time Syndicate, we were a full hip hop collective. So we had media, we had promotions, we had the politics, we had the organizing, because again, we looked at it that we have to be the ones that preserve the culture. And ironically, all of the founders of Nation Time Syndicate were from New York, Connecticut, so none of us was from Atlanta. So we felt like we had to be the ones that preserve it in Atlanta, so it didn't turn.
So y'all had all migrated to Atlanta.
Right, exactly. Gotcha. And of course, so many black students come here for the colleges and whatnot. You know what I'm saying? So that's how a number of people got here. So when Temple of Hip Hop started in 1996, it was already in that same kind of line. And I always point out to people, Nation Time starts in 91. Temple of Hip Hop starts in 96. So I'm just saying, we were already doing similar type of work. But of course, KRS-One.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
You know what I'm saying?
And you told me this. KRS mentioned this as well. There was a point where, you know, when you're young in the culture and you trying to like get all the initiations and do the thing to be down, you know, with the squad. And you were one of the people, KRS. There's a couple of people that told me this. Thank God I ain't go to the wrong people when I was being impressionable. But that said, you know, it's kind of like it's something you do, right? There's something you do, and then there's something you live, right? So it's like if you wanted to know if you down with certain organizations, a lot of times me being an outspoken person, I'd always had conflicts with getting down with a group or organization for a cause, and then supposed to be loyal to things that have nothing to do with that cause, even to defeat the cause. And it was so refreshing to me, like everything that I was already feeling that hip hop was, when people like you said, you know, it's not about somebody giving you a stamp or a badge in this type of organization, this type of temple. It's about you being it and represented it. So by the time someone chose to affiliate me with certain organizations or certain shows, I knew I deserved it. I didn't have to ask like who approved me. I knew I had to ask what was I doing that got me here, right?
Exactly. So, you know, when KRS-One opened up, you know, the Temple of Hip Hop in Atlanta in 2001, this was right after the UN event, which was May 16, 2001. You know, we celebrated 20 years. It was right after that. He was going on this national tour, telling people about the Hip Hop Declaration of Peace and things of that nature, and was going to start these different temples. But when he first came to Atlanta, he had a couple of meetings, but you know, it didn't really mesh the same kind of way, because Atlanta is one of those kind of cities is that we don't really care about celebrity like that. We don't, you know what I'm saying? It's like, we're not going to be jockey because you, whoever you are, you know, if you come to build, come to build. But, you know, so things didn't really work out for whatever reason. Fast forward to 2003, I'm in my senior year, and I'm in my last year in ministry school. Got out about that part. In my last year in ministry school, and we're having a youth conference. So we wanted someone that could speak to the youth and the adults. KRS was at the top of the list. We sent the email, and as the story goes from KRS' point of view, at the same time, he was in LA, and God told him that he needed to return to Atlanta because his minister was in Atlanta. Now, of course, you know, when I met KRS-One the second time, and we talked, and he was like, yo, server, I've been looking for you for 10 years, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you KRS-One, how you been looking for me? How you been looking for me for 10 years? I'm right here. But what he was talking about was the same thing that we talked about, that he wanted somebody that could walk in authority of being hip hop without having to have KRS co-sign for what they're doing. The whole essence of the Temple of Hip Hop, which is what I love about the Temple, the Temple of Hip Hop is really more of a concept of being hip hop. You know what I'm saying? We're not doing hip hop, we are hip hop. So whether we're teaching a class, whether we're riding a bike, whatever we're doing, we are hip hop. It's not based on what we're doing, it's based on who we are and how we're living. So that concept, you know, was something that it was easy for me to adapt to, because I was doing the same thing with Nature Top Syndicate. So I didn't do anything new when I started working with KRS-One. He just kind of expanded the work that I was doing, you know. And
I don't think a lot of people really do understand that concept, to be honest with you. So we might need to discuss that just a little bit. I mean, Greg, you're a perfect example, right? Like, you were living it. You created an LLC. You were. It's not that you're not doing. When we say it's not doing, it's being. It's doing from the being, right? It's not just being something else and then getting to do it on the side. So there is a lot of doing to it. But Greg, you were doing all these things because of who you were being, not because someone was paying you, right? But could you just go back to 1996 real quick? Is that when the Temple of Hip Hop was originally founded in 96?
Yes, 1996 is when the Temple of Hip Hop officially started. In 1998 is when Hip Hop Appreciation Week first started.
Because I heard a rumor that it was actually either KRS was in Hartford, some weird coincidence where it actually had something to do with Trinity or Hartford in 96, even though the Temple of Hip Hop, Trinity chapter didn't get formed till later. There was like a weird connection. And then later on, I talked to one of my mentors, Abio Duna Iwole from The Last Poets, and his daughter went to Trinity also. So I don't know if you could like did you know where this happened in 96, like, or is that something that's forgotten?
No, I mean the temple started in L.A. When KRS was in working for L.A. In fact, that's when KRS was doing his little stint as the executive with Warner Brothers, and he wanted to use it as a way to kind of galvanize. One thing that I always appreciated about KRS One is that he was always about organizing, always about getting people together. From the Stop the Violence movement to the Human Education Against Lies to the Temple of Hip Hop. It's always about bringing people together, and looking at hip hop, as this from a special lens, from a different sight, as we say. And as you said, I remember when I first met Greg at the festival in 2007, and him being from Atlanta, I was like, yo, okay, from Atlanta, somebody else from Atlanta up here. But Greg is a great example that because he's not an artist, someone who has a limited view on hip hop, they might not even look at him as hip hop until they have a conversation with him. It's like, yo, not only is he hip hop, he's international hip hop. You know what I'm saying? And that's the mindset that the temple builds on. So again, I wasn't thinking about the Trinity Festival at all. When Z contacted me, it was around the same time where, as the national organizer with the Temple of Hip Hop, we were talking about having Temple of Hip Hop chapters around the country. And it was just a conversation that we were having. Chris and I were having, organizing, and Z called. And when Z called, that's what I said. When Z called,
perfect timing again.
I hollered at Chris, let him know what it was. And then, to this day, you all have set up.
So it's like KRS was looking for you at that time when you was just finishing up your minister degree, right? Having already been living hip hop and then having a degree to it. He was looking for you, found, and then you was looking to expand and have the chapters, and then Z called y'all. Exactly. Wow. Exactly. So in 96, the idea was created, but it took time for these pieces to fall in place.
Another 10 years did it manifest. And what I tell people about Z, when I met this kid at 19 years old, I understood that he got it, because again, to me, hip hop is always an essence. There's a spirit, something intangible, that you really can't put your finger on it, but it's like we know each other, which is why, to me, that's what I always love about the Trinity International Hip Hop Festival. To me, it is the living manifestation of my dreams of what hip hop can be. Multicultural, multiracial people from around the world that are bringing their best selves through hip hop culture to make the world better. And as corny as that may sound to people, that's why I'm in it still. I'm all about humanity. Anything that we can do to bring people together, and nothing that I've seen outside of hip hop culture does it better than what we do. And Trinity International Hip Hop Festival is a living example of that.
Yeah, well, I'm going to jump in. That's a perfect opportunity to segue into talking about the fest, for this year. Just we only have about 20 minutes, and there's so much I know just because we got 4 people, a lot to say. But I really, want to kind of shift to really reflecting on what we're seeing here, understanding the background of of how people kind of came to this table of putting together this festival year after year. So let me hop over to Greg real quick. Let's just, again, I'm going to share my screen and let people take a look. Oh, I thought I had that ready. There we go. I was trying to be, that didn't work. That didn't work. So trying to be tech, but don't worry about it. But any which way, people can see below. If you want to check out the festival, you can see the banner down below if you want to check it out so people can kind of know what we're talking about. Unfortunately, we can't provide context for everything. But all 4 people, y'all were at the festival. Y'all not only organized it, but actually watched it, were participants. And I'm just hoping to start with Greg. If you can kind of talk a little bit about takeaways, what were again, this was a virtual event. Can you talk specifically what you helped organize? And then talk a little bit about impressions. What were some of your impressions of the 3-day virtual festival?
So what I helped organize this year was the concert that was headlined by D Smoke with the other international and local and U.S. artists, and also the DJ showcase, which also showcased U.S. and international DJs. So I contacted a lot of different people, tracked them down. Well, I worked with the students to identify who we wanted at first to contact, and then track people down and did all the contracts and background stuff to get it working, and then facilitated them all submitting the videos. So a little bit of logistical stuff on that. I was really happy. One of my main things was, because we weren't constrained. One of the things people don't probably know about the festival is, because we try to have so many international artists, we are often constrained by cost, by visas and travel expenses. Those are the hugest things for us. So we're always looking for ways to do those things in a way that makes sense for the festival, budget-wise and as far as programming-wise. This year, we didn't have those constraints necessarily. So I reached out to people that I thought, wow, I don't know if we would ever get them at the festival. For example, Koflo, he's a DJ that I met like 8 years ago at a showcase at another festival, and he's from Singapore. And it's just, having him fly over from Singapore and getting visas to perform, it's but being able to participate this year, that was huge. The Ugandans, they were actually scheduled to come over in 2018, and they got denied their visas, and they had never been they've never been off the continent before, and the U.S. wouldn't let them in. So we were able to reconnect with them, and these young artists were able to film and give us a performance that they couldn't have otherwise. So that was something I was really invested in this year, and I think it came off wonderfully. I enjoyed everything, the top to bottom, from the festival. I enjoyed watching it. I enjoyed the chat, being able to connect with people while we were watching it. One of my other takeaways was that I had hoped that we would get a bigger international audience because they didn't have to travel to be at it, and it was free. I thought that would be impetus for people to join. And it wasn't quite, we did have an international audience. It just wasn't quite as big as I thought it would be.
The platform did provide for that. I think the first step is there. It's kind of like what Minister Server was just saying. Temple of Hip Hop, created in '96. It took a while for these pieces to come together. Mm-hmm. And it almost seems like you have to find people. It's not so much of making something and pushing it out there. It almost seems like there's this element I'm noticing, at least from this podcast tonight, of allowing people who are already looking for the thing, right? To be like, oh, I'm looking for this thing too. Let's meet up here, So that's something where I think, with you being part of it, Minister Server, with Greg, with World Hip Hop Market, with Nomadic Wax, with Boca Floja, what he was doing with Kiyumbo Arts Collective, it's kind of like there's an element of, I'm not sure if we did that this year in terms of reaching out to organizations that are already hip hop and international and saying like, hey, meet up here because you do this and you'll be proud of this. And we weren't gonna do that. I just want to say we weren't going to do that because this happened in the midst of COVID, and it barely happened and it put together, but it's something to consider.
Yeah, I think COVID fatigue, we were up against that, even though this was something that we said we're going to go virtual last year when we had to cancel the festival. We're like, well, we're definitely going to do this next year virtual. And so this is a year-long process, but we just happened to do it at a time where people are just tired, everyone's tired. And I also think too, the time when we did it was really conducive to US time. for the live, and then, not on the, that's a fault of the student organizers, but like, unfortunately they're beholden to a funding schedule that doesn't make sense for us. And so it was just late with advertising. We literally had a week to really put this on blast, and that's just kind of nothing,
I remember an Australian person in the comments chiming in like earlier in the event, like, "Hey, what time is this happening?" Greg was like, "Hang in there, hang in there." They're like in a completely different time zone.
Yeah, totally different time zones. And we didn't go specific enough to just be like, people figure it out, right? So, but I've seen on other flyers like, 7 a.m. New York time, blah, 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 Lagos time, blah, blah, blah. We didn't really have time for all that. But luckily, luckily though, and part of that, I think the reason for that was because the festival was a live event, and now it's also an event that you can still check out on your own time for the next month. So the festivals, you can check it out till May 11th.
May 11th. Okay.
On the lower banner here across the screen, you'll see the website you can go to.
Hit that up, y'all.
www.Trinity.
In other words, it's for a limited time. Don't take it for granted.
Yeah.
Professor Markle had a contract with this organization. They're doing a great job to host it till then, but it will not be live on YouTube or anything like that after that. So go check it out. I'll spread the word. Greg, maybe what you're saying now, as people are buzzing, as conversations are coming up, we can say, "Hey, what do y'all think of this idea of having it, virtual, and check it out and give us your feedback?" And actually, for y'all watching this now, if you want to give your feedback on the favorite showcase, the MCs, you can help choose who you think was the favorite MC of this year, because that person gets to go on stage as a headliner next year, which is just to interject this tangent, that's something that was always hip hop to me. Server, to your point, like me having some position of power, it's like, okay, how can I make sure I'm not denying people from the way I came in, right? And that was one of those things, recognizing people like we were talking about who are already doing the thing. So the favorite showcase is kind of like a way where it just recognizing there's some dope MCs out there, whether we chose you, whether you were selected to be a headliner, whether anyone ever heard of you before, there is a path for you to get in a cypher. And based on whatever happens in that cypher, you might find yourself being a headliner, getting a check, getting your name on the flyer next year. Shout out to Blessings Divine who did that this year. But I just want to say, like, that is the essence of me trying to give back in hip hop the way I believe hip hop gave to me, and I believe that the festival gives to me. So it's an honor to like kind of have y'all chime in and vote for that, right?
Yeah, and I just want to kind of, so let's like, I kind of want to bring it back to Greg, but bring Minister Server in here a little bit more when thinking about takeaways, right? What were your sort of impressions? Greg was talking about what he was organizing, but then also the viewing experience as just a viewer. What were some of your impressions? Would you agree with Greg's assessment?
Definitely that, and what I also just appreciated is, again, to pull it together in a virtual way, as you said, when a lot of people are Zoom fatigue, online fatigue and things of that nature, it still flow. I could still feel the spirit of it. As Greg said, like people were in a chat and people were excited, and for me, it's always I'm never looking for like the masses to really get down with hip hop culture, because again, I think it's like most cultures, as we've been talking about, if you're not really called to it, then you're probably going to be called to it just from the entertainment side. You know what I'm saying? But I think, one of my biggest takeaways, I really appreciated the film that Boca Floja did. That Osvaldo Magenta, I think that's the name of it.
Yeah.
Because it for me, it was so unique and highly did it, the subject matter, the things that we need to talk about. I think that was the biggest takeaway. Excuse me. I really love the DJs. I love seeing Tila Rock. It was just so diverse. The only thing that I really missed was seeing you all in person and being in the cafeteria, and hanging around. I missed that type of stuff. But for me, I truly felt the spirit of it. I was so proud to be a part of it. I was so proud of the work that you guys did because y'all, like I said, y'all did the heavy lifting and really made it happen. And I think, one of the things that all of us definitely should be doing is letting people know that they can still check it out to May 11th. Because I think, particularly with our international community, because now they can kind of check it out at their leisure. Not be, of course, in the time frames of it. But it was tremendous to me. But the film of Boca Flava probably stood out most because, again, that's the subject matter. The way he presented it, particularly, all that we're dealing with socially now, particularly in hip hop, because if there's one thing that we still have not done a great job of dealing with hip hop, it is misogyny, it is patriarchy, it is, all the different ways that we, have to grow. And so for me, that was the biggest takeaway from it.
And I want to jump in 2 things here. What I loved about that film, and we're going to be talking with Boca Flava through this series later on. But one of the things I loved about watching that film was that only a hip hopper could make that. It wasn't about hip hop, the subject matter, but was from a hip hop lens. Suffice, what do you think about that?
Nah, I know exactly what you.
Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute, brother.
Oh, I'm sorry. Nah, it's just exactly. I'm just the whole structure and the rupture of the way it was presented, where I won't kill it for anyone who still needs to go see it, but and it's free on YouTube, by the way, and some of his previous films are as well. He's been prolific. Shout out to him for that. But you're hearing these interviews, but you're not seeing the interviewer, right? So it's like sampling and scratching and mixing things together in a way that you wouldn't get just in regular conversation. And I feel like that's what, any dancer takes regular walking down the street and turns it into a move, right? Mm-hmm. But hip hop takes it into like a really in your face move that's telling you a point. Any poet takes regular language and makes you consider it a little deeper. But a rapper really is supposed to make you feel a certain point from this language. And so a filmmaker, it's almost like it was a bonus chapter to Jeff Chang's book where he talks about people using hip hop in all these new ways beyond the original 4 elements, because he was sampling and mixing in voices and concepts and ideas in a way very much how a DJ does to make a new work that still honors the previous work.
Right.
One of the quotes,
and it was shot, and like even the way that he shot it, man, it was so hip hop, no doubt.
Mm-hmm. Greg, you want to share a little bit, just because we're close on time, so I want to make sure we get. I have this other question I want to throw out to everybody. So, Greg, what did you think about the film and Boca Flava? You've known Boca Flava again. The great thing,
I met Boca Flava at the first festival I was at in 2007. Because after he performed, he set up a vendor stand right next to me, and then was there the next night. So we stood there for like 7 hours together and watched the second night of concerts because they had 2 concerts.
Oh my God!
And so we connected then, and I've worked with him extensively since then. And this was the second time I saw the film, and it's just as powerful as the first time. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that stuck with me that is so hard to explain to people until they watch it is that he said the way that normal documentary shooters shoot is a colonizer's mindset. Mm-hmm. And so the whole construction, the way that he did it was different. Like, it wasn't just a normal documentary. I like the level of which he's like attacking, or reorganizing the hegemonic forces. He says it so much better than I do, but that's I wanted to say that it blew me away.
When you first met him, do you remember speaking to him? Because I remember seeing y'all speak, and I had like a vending table next to y'all. He wasn't fluent in English. Am I recalling this correctly? Way back then,
he. A little less. I mean,
I remember him being a lot less. It might be a warped thing, but as I was watching him interview with you, Professor Markle, this dude's slang and academic, like erudite vocabulary was off the chain.
Listen,
like
man,
grad school. And I was like,
and that's
this dude wasn't even fluent in the language, and like I'm barely trying to hang on with my Spanglish, and he like, but I say that to say also I feel like hip hop was one of the ways where he mastered the English language.
He mastered the English, and he mastered the academic language. But what I liked about that was also him saying, because hip hop's also about like knowledge, vocabulary. We shouldn't shun these things. If you don't know what the word means, look it up. Look up with these colonial. You know what I mean? Like he's on like his thing with language. I mean, I love that conversation, the Q&A. That could have gone on for 2 hours.
He told me a few years ago, he goes, I'm not gonna bring my language down for someone to understand me. He's like, I'm gonna speak at that level so that because he's earned the respect. He goes to universities and colleges and he speaks at that level, and whether he has a degree or not, it doesn't matter, because they want him there because of the work that he's done. And I so much respect for language.
Him. Listen, y'all. I know we could have this conversation for days, but we got about 4 minutes, and I do want to leave so everyone kind of says a few things. But this is the other interesting thing in this conversation about what we're talking about, which made this festival different from the other ones in the sense that by going virtual, what we saw more is more people were attending the panels, academic panels and lectures and films than we usually get when we have in person. While the stuff like the main concert and the show B-Boy battle, the stuff that y'all know, you've been there, are off the chain, going till 3 a.m, everybody's still there. This had the lowest viewership. There's something about translating the live element of hip hop performance in a virtual space that, while I really appreciated how the artists and everybody came with something like, we're just going to give you a video. We're going to like mash it up and edit it and make it cool and presentable because we're doing this virtual platform. And I really appreciate that, because we didn't ask them that as organizers. We're just like, do it cool, man. You're going on, like you're going live, like, you're going on, so like make it cool, like, like just don't put a camera down. And a lot of people stepped up as far as presentation. But did you find that interesting too about like this festival was more conducive towards the knowledge academic component, because people had to sit down in the chairs, sit down a little bit, it wasn't like live standing up. There were no, the ciphers changed. We'll start with Greg and then Mr. Server.
Yeah. Just briefly, I guess I chalk that up to people that are looking for that don't often have a place to find that. Like, unless you're going to a conference, unless you're going to somewhere where they offer those kind of panels, you don't get to hear those discussions very often. So that's what I chalked it up to.
Yeah. And I would echo that same thing. And I was glad to see, the people that were checking in for the different panels, because again, particularly the b-boy part, that's definitely more of an in-person, feeling than, that's probably why, because again, at the festival, that's normally the largest attended event that we have. You know what I'm saying? So yeah. But
and it's different. You can see the b-boys too. They didn't have a live audience to be like, so it's like they had to do the best that they can in that context, and it was still good. I'm just saying that the difference of the take away the live component, and it says something about hip hop, about the live element to hip hop being such a crucial element for community building, right? For feeling that bond. Suffice, what do you have to say about that?
It kind of ties me back into how you started this, speaking about how one of the benefits of this festival is that it's student-led every year, right? Students run the Temple of Hip Hop chapter on the campus, and yet there are pros and cons to that, right? There's just like anything else. And some of the pros of that are that, I told this phrase to Professor Markle. Rotational exclusivity is one of the things that I think is part and parcel of hip hop, meaning you have someone like Minister Server in the middle of the cipher dropping bars, killing it 1 second, and then tomorrow we come back in the cipher and there's this like 4-year-old who comes in the cipher and has completely different beats, completely different colors, but she kills the cipher and everybody's supporting her thing too. So the beauty is that the cipher allows anyone to come in and get respect. You have to show and prove. It doesn't say anyone can come in and be the leader. You have to come in and show and prove, but you're always given that opportunity for anybody to come in and then hold that crown for a second until someone else does. So with the students, that's how college works. And a lot of times, whereas us as community partners, we're here, so we have the experience of the past. People often unfairly refer to the students like it's a group of students, and they're rotational. Like these students are coming in and then they're going out and there's a new group of students. So they're very much on the job training. And that's part of our job as mentors, to like pass on the last student's knowledge to them, right? But I think back to this, right? That happened this year where, like, in order to get to the favorite showcase, I actually had an online cipher that I just invited anyone to the open mic. It was an online open mic. Now, I didn't say you might get to be a headliner or anything like that, because that would have defeated the purpose. I just said I'm doing an online open mic cipher. The Temple of Hip Hop is throwing it. And people who showed up, members voted on them and chose them to be eligible to be favorites, right? And I feel like doing that type of thing more is what we'll see start to get incorporated into things like this. Because by the time you see who's already selected, you're missing a very large part of what you see at the beat. Like you talk about the B-Boy event being the biggest. Part of it is because someone's like, yo, so-and-so's here, and oh, this battle's happening, and you can come in. You don't have to already know the person. You don't have to even already know about the event. I hate to say that, but you know me, I'm a little bit of the wild, unpredictable type. That is an element of it where you don't even need to know what's happening, and you can come and be part of it. And we haven't found a way to do that digitally online yet with hip hop, but let's continue to work on it.
Yeah. So listen, y'all, I'm really sorry. I'm going to have to stop that conversation here. You're listening to Living Hip Hop, conversations about hip hop education, where we have organizers, co-organizer of the Trinity International Hip Hop Festival, reflecting back on the history, as well as our recent festival that we had April 9th through 11th, which you can check out by just looking at the banner below, www.trinityhiphopfest.afterparty.live. That is up day 1, day 2, day 3, up until May 11th. Make sure you check it out. We're here next Wednesday, 6 p.m., talking to some student organizers and one of our featured participants, Dr. Daniela Gomez, assistant professor of international studies, hip hop studies at Trinity College. Thank you, Minister Server. Thank you, Greg Schick. My co-host, Self Suffice. We're back next week, and appreciate y'all.
Professor Markle.
Right? Thank y'all.
Appreciate you.
Take care.
Appreciate all of y'all, man.
Unity.
Salute.
Hey.
Safely having fun.